The glass doors slammed open as Daniel Cross stepped forward and placed his palm flat on the marble counter. "I want my money, now." The sound cut through the bank lobby like a snapped wire. Conversation stalled. A woman mid-laugh froze with her mouth open. A teller's fingers hovered above a keyboard, unmoving. The security guard near the entrance straightened instinctively, his eyes flicking to the tall man behind the counter. Victor Hale looked up slowly. He didn't recognize Daniel at first. That was the problem. Victor adjusted his cufflinks, his expression already edged with annoyance. "Sir, if you'll take a number and wait like everyone else." "I'm not waiting," Daniel said, his voice even. "And I don't need a number." Elena shifted beside him. "Daniel," she whispered, panic slipping into her tone. "Please, don't do this here." Victor's eyes finally landed on her. His face changed instantly, smoothing into something indulgent. "Elena, I didn't realize you were coming in today." She forced a smile. "Uncle Victor." Only then did Victor look back at Daniel, this time with curiosity sharpened by disdain. "Ah, so this is him." Daniel didn't react. Victor leaned back in his chair. "You're making a scene in a private banking hall, Mr. Cross," Daniel said. Victor chuckled. "Of course you are." The people nearby pretended not to listen. They always did. But they were listening. Victor clasped his hands together. "Mr. Cross, this area is reserved for clients with verified assets exceeding 7 figures, Daniel cut in. 8, Victor smiled thinly. 9, Daniel nodded. "Good. Then you won't have any trouble processing my withdrawal." "A beat," Victor laughed. Loudly. Too loudly. "Elena," he said, shaking his head. "I thought we talked about this. I warned you." Her face flushed. "This isn't—" Victor raised a hand, silencing her. His eyes never left Daniel. "Mr. Cross, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you don't walk into Hawthorne Financial and make demands unless you can back them up." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Then check." The smile slipped from Victor's face. "I beg your pardon? Check the account," Daniel said. "I'll wait." Victor stared at him, then laughed again, softer this time. "You don't even have a private client badge." "I don't wear labels," Daniel replied. That earned a ripple of quiet amusement from somewhere behind them. Victor's jaw tightened. "Elena," he said, his tone turning cold. "Step aside." She hesitated. "Uncle, please. You're embarrassing yourself." Victor scoffed. "I'm protecting you." Daniel exhaled through his nose. "From what?" "From marrying above your understanding," Victor snapped. Silence fell heavy. Daniel straightened. "You think money makes you superior?" Victor smiled. "I know it does." "Then this should be simple," Daniel said. "Pull up the account." Victor leaned forward. "Fine. Humor me. What's the account name?" Daniel slid a folded slip of paper across the counter. Victor didn't touch it. "What is this?" he asked. "Instructions," Daniel said. "For the transfer." Victor glanced at the paper, then finally picked it up. His smile faltered, not much, but enough. The teller beside him leaned closer. "Sir," she murmured. "That routing—" Victor shot her a glare. "I can read." He typed, "Once, twice." His brow furrowed. The smile vanished completely. "What is this?" he muttered. Daniel said nothing. Victor typed again, faster now. His fingers hesitated. He cleared his throat. "Elena," he said quietly, "when did your husband open an account with us?" She swallowed. I don't know." Victor looked up sharply. "You don't know." Daniel tilted his head. "You didn't ask." Victor's chair scraped as he stood. "This is impossible. M." A murmur rippled through the room. Victor's voice dropped. "This account, this can't be right." Daniel finally spoke again. "You said 9 figures." Victor's face drained of color. He straightened, forcing composure. "This is likely an administrative error." "Then escalate it," Daniel replied. Victor clenched his jaw. "You don't escalate errors. You correct them." "Good," Daniel said. "Correct it." Victor turned to the teller. "Call compliance." She hesitated. "Sir, they're already flagged," Victor snapped. "Call them." The teller lifted the phone with shaking fingers. Elena stared at the screen behind the counter. Numbers scrolled. "Too many. Too clean." Her voice cracked. "Daniel, what is this?" He didn't look at her. "It's what I built." Victor spun back toward him. "You expect me to believe you accumulated this without credentials, without exposure, without us knowing?" Daniel met his gaze. "That's the point." Victor laughed again, but there was no humor left in it. "You're a ghost." Daniel nodded once. "By choice." The compliance officer arrived within minutes, then another executive. Then security quietly repositioned themselves, not around Daniel, but away from him. Victor stepped aside as the second executive spoke. Mr. Cross will need confirmation of intent. Daniel nodded. I'm withdrawing $7 million. The room seemed to inhale as one. Elena grabbed his arm. Daniel, stop, please. He finally looked at her. Why? Her voice broke. Because you don't need to do this. He studied her face, searching. You're right, I don't, Victor snapped. Then why are you? Daniel looked back at him. Because you asked me to prove my worth. Victor opened his mouth. Daniel continued, calm and steady. And I'm done proving anything. The executive swallowed. Sir, once processed, this will impact. I know, Daniel said. The executive nodded. Very well, Victor whispered. You can't just walk in here and dismantle us. Daniel's eyes hardened. You dismantled yourself the moment you mistook status for substance. The screen refreshed. Transaction pending. Elena stared at the confirmation line, her hands trembling. You never told me. Daniel's voice softened. You never asked. The money began to move, and for the first time in Victor Hale's life, the room no longer belonged to him. The confirmation chime sounded soft, almost polite, as if it weren't announcing the slow collapse of Victor Hale's authority. Victor stared at the screen as though it had betrayed him personally. Pause the transfer, he barked. The executive beside him didn't move. Sir, it's already in motion. I said pause it. The executive swallowed. We can't. That single word hit harder than any insult. Victor turned to Daniel, his voice dropping into something sharp and urgent. You're making a mistake. Daniel clasped his hands loosely in front of him. No, I'm correcting one. Elena's breath came shallow. Daniel, please, she whispered again, this time quieter, as if afraid the room might hear her desperation. We can talk about this later. At home. He looked at her, really looked this time. Her eyes weren't angry. They weren't even confused anymore. They were afraid. Later, he said gently, is how this always gets buried. Victor scoffed, though the sound lacked confidence. You think money gives you leverage over me? Daniel's gaze shifted back to him. No, I think arrogance blinded you to who was standing in front of you. Victor straightened his tie with shaking fingers. You're enjoying this. Daniel shook his head. You misunderstand me. If I were enjoying it, I'd be smiling. Silence followed. The transfer completed. The executive cleared his throat. The funds have left Hawthorne. Financial. A few people gasped. Someone behind them whispered, $7 million? Victor's face tightened. This conversation isn't over. Daniel nodded. It never was. Security stepped aside as Daniel turned to leave. Elena followed him instinctively, her heels clicking too fast against the marble floor. Outside, the cold air hit her like a slap. She grabbed his arm. How long? He stopped walking. How long what? How long have you been this person? Her voice trembled between awe and accusation. Daniel looked out at the street, at the traffic flowing like nothing monumental had just happened. I've always been this person. She shook her head. No, I would have known. You knew what you wanted to know, he said quietly. Her lips parted. That's not fair. He finally turned toward her. Neither was today. They stood there, the bank doors closing behind them with a muted thud. Elena crossed her arms. My uncle humiliated you, I get that. But did you have to do it like that? Yes. So publicly? Yes. So completely? Daniel met her gaze. Especially completely, she exhaled sharply. You made him look small. He was small, Daniel replied. He just didn't know it yet. Her voice rose. He's family. Daniel's jaw tightened. And I'm your husband. She hesitated. That pause said everything. Daniel looked away first. Get in the car. The drive home passed in strained silence. The city lights blurred past the windows, reflections breaking across the glass like fractures. At home, Elena set her bag down with trembling hands. You've been hiding this from me for years. I've been protecting myself, Daniel corrected. From me. From expectations, he said. From people who confuse wealth with worth. She turned on him. So you thought I was like them? Daniel paused. You laughed when they joked about me. Her eyes widened. I laughed because it was easier than fighting them. And you never fought them, he said. She faltered. You never gave me a reason to. That's not love, Daniel said quietly. Her voice broke. Then what is? He didn't answer. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. You're leaving me, she said suddenly. Daniel looked at her. I'm giving us space. Her breath hitched. That's not the same thing. It's close enough, he replied. She sank onto the couch. I thought we were building a life. We were, he said. Just not on the same foundation. She wiped at her eyes angrily. You think money makes you superior now? No, Daniel said. I think honesty does. The next morning, Victor Hale woke up to missed calls. By noon, rumors were spreading through Crest Falls Financial District. $7 million didn't vanish quietly. Not from Hawthorne Financial. Clients asked questions. Regulators flagged transactions. Executives whispered behind closed doors. Victor stormed into his office, slamming the door behind him. Get compliance on the line. They're already reviewing, his assistant said nervously. Victor's jaw clenched. Reviewing what? Everything. His phone buzzed. Daniel Cross. Victor stared at the name, disbelief curdling into fury. He answered. You have a lot of nerve calling me, Victor snapped. Daniel's voice came calm through the line. I wanted to inform you I'll be closing my remaining accounts. Victor laughed bitterly. You think this ends here? It ends where you stop, pretending you're untouchable, Daniel replied. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself, Daniel said. I simply stopped you from hiding. Victor's voice dropped. You think the city will welcome you now? Daniel paused. I don't need it to. The call ended. Victor threw the phone across the room. That evening, Elena sat alone in the living room, the house too quiet. She replayed the moment in the bank over and over, the way the room had shifted, the way Daniel hadn't flinched. She realized with a cold clarity that she'd loved the idea of him more than the man himself. And now she wasn't sure which one she'd lost. Across the city, Daniel stood by the window of a hotel room he'd booked for the night. The city lights reflected, back at him, fractured and distant. For the first time in years he felt exposed, not because the world had seen him, but because the one person he'd trusted most finally had, and hadn't liked what she saw. Daniel didn't sleep. The city hummed outside the hotel window, distant sirens and passing engines blending into a low, restless murmur. He sat on the edge of the bed, jacket still on, phone resting face down beside him like a loaded weapon. At 2:14 a.m., it buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for a long second before answering. Daniel Cross, he said. A pause. Then a man's voice, older, measured. Mr. Cross, this is Marcus Ellery. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He knew the name. Everyone in Crest Falls financial world did. Ellery and Company Private Capital. Yes, Daniel replied. I know who you are. I imagine you do, Marcus said calmly. You caused quite a stir today. Daniel exhaled through his nose. I didn't ask for publicity. No, Marcus agreed. But you earned attention. Silence stretched between them. Why are you calling? Daniel asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice carried something deliberate. Because men like Victor Hale don't lose $7 million without consequences. And men like you don't walk away unchallenged. Daniel leaned back slightly. Are you threatening me? Marcus chuckled softly. No, I'm warning you, and offering something better. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. Go on. There will be retaliation, Marcus said. Not openly, not yet, but quietly. Reputational pressure, denied access, closed doors. Victor has friends who won't appreciate being embarrassed. Daniel's jaw clenched. I've handled worse. I believe you, Marcus said, but even the strongest operators benefit from allies. Daniel said nothing. Marcus continued. Ellery and Company would like to extend an invitation. Dinner. No contracts, just conversation. Daniel hesitated. Why? Because I admire men who don't beg for approval, Marcus replied, and because your kind of independence is rare. The call ended shortly after. Daniel set the phone down, pulse steady but mind racing. Across town, Elena lay awake in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling she'd stared at as a teenager, feeling smaller than she ever had as a wife. Her phone buzzed too. Uncle Victor. She ignored it. Then another call, and another, finally a text. You need to talk to me. Now. She closed her eyes, chest tight. When she finally answered, Victor's voice came sharp and strained. Do you have any idea what he's done? Elena sat up. He withdrew his money. He humiliated me, Victor snapped. He humiliated this family. He defended himself, Elena shot back, surprising herself. There was a pause. Then Victor's tone changed, lowering. That man is dangerous. Elena frowned. Dangerous? He's reckless, Victor corrected. People like him destabilize systems. You insulted him, she said quietly, repeatedly. He should have known his place. The words hung there, ugly and undeniable. Elena swallowed. That's exactly the problem, Victor scoffed. You're choosing him over us? Her voice shook. I already chose you. Every time I stayed quiet. Victor's breath sounded harsh through the phone. If you don't fix this, you're going to regret it. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, realization dawning slowly and painfully. They hadn't wanted her happiness. They wanted obedience. The next morning, Daniel walked into a modest cafe near the river, early enough that the crowd was thin. He chose a corner table, back to the wall. Marcus Ellery arrived exactly on time. He was shorter than Daniel expected, silver-haired, eyes sharp with curiosity rather than judgment. "Mr. Cross," Marcus said, extending a hand. Daniel shook it firmly. "Mr. Ellery." They sat. Marcus didn't waste time. Victor Hale is already spinning the narrative. Daniel smirked faintly. "I assumed he would. He's telling people you're unstable, vindictive, overextended." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Overextended?" Marcus smiled thinly. "Yes. Apparently your entire portfolio is a house of cards." Daniel chuckled once. "That's comforting." Marcus leaned forward. "You're going to be audited." Daniel's smile faded. "By whom?" "Anyone Victor can influence," Marcus replied. "It won't stick, but it will be loud." Daniel nodded slowly. "Let them look." Marcus studied him. "You're remarkably calm." Daniel took a sip of his coffee. "I've lived below my means my entire life. There's nothing to hide." "Still," Marcus said, "noise has consequences. Deals fall through. Partners hesitate." Daniel met his gaze. "You're here to offer shelter. I'm here to offer leverage," Marcus corrected. "My firm doesn't care where you went to school. We care about results." Daniel exhaled. "And the price?" Marcus smiled. "Access, influence, mutual benefit." Daniel considered him for a long moment. "I don't want to owe anyone." Marcus nodded. "Then don't. Think of it as alignment." Daniel leaned back. "I'll consider it." That afternoon, Elena drove to the hotel. She sat in the car for 10 minutes before going inside. When Daniel opened the door, surprise flickered across his face. "Can we talk?" she asked. He stepped aside. They stood awkwardly in the room, space heavy with things unsaid. "I defended you," Elena said quickly. "To my uncle, to my grandfather." Daniel crossed his arms. "After—" She winced. "I know. I needed you during," he said. "Not when it was already over." Her eyes filled. "I was scared, so was I," Daniel said softly. "But I still stood there alone." She reached for him, then stopped. "I didn't know how—" Daniel sighed. "That's the problem." Her voice trembled. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose myself," he replied. "Silence," she whispered. "They're trying to ruin you." He met her gaze. "Let them try." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I don't belong with them anymore." Daniel studied her face, searching for certainty. "And where do you belong?" She hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. Daniel nodded slowly. "You should go." Her breath caught. "That's it? For now," he said gently. "I need clarity, not apologies." She left without another word. That evening, Daniel's phone lit up repeatedly. Emails from lenders requesting documentation. A partner delaying a signature. A meeting canceled until further notice. Victor Hale's fingerprints were everywhere. Daniel stared at the messages, jaw tightening. Then he opened another email from Marcus Ellery. Subject: "Thought you should see this." Attached was a document. Internal correspondence from Hawthorne Financial. A quiet memo discussing risk exposure and internal leadership review. Daniel's lips curved slightly. Victor wasn't just angry. He was scared, and scared men made mistakes. The game had escalated, and Daniel was done playing defense. Daniel read the memo twice, then a third time. The wording was careful, corporate, designed to look routine. But beneath the polished language was panic. Victor Hale's name appeared too often, always paired with phrases like leadership exposure, reputational vulnerability, contingency, planning. Daniel set the phone down slowly. He wasn't imagining it anymore. Victor wasn't fighting to win. Victor was fighting to survive. The next morning, the pressure intensified. 2 contractors backed out of renovation timelines within hours of each other. A zoning approval that had been basically guaranteed was suddenly delayed. A lender he'd worked with for years asked for updated documentation they'd never required before. Daniel sat at his desk, hands clasped, breathing evenly. This wasn't coincidence. This was coordinated. His phone rang. Marcus Ellery. "You seeing it?" Marcus asked without preamble. "Yes," Daniel replied. "They're squeezing." Marcus hummed. "Victor's pulling every favor he has left." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "How many does he have?" "Less than he thinks," Marcus said. "But enough to be annoying." Daniel's eyes hardened. "I don't like annoying." "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I'm calling." Daniel waited. "I want you to come to a meeting tonight," Marcus continued. "Private. Small room. 5 people." "Who?" Daniel asked. "People who decide who stays solvent when storms hit," Marcus replied. "And who gets washed away." Daniel exhaled slowly. "You're asking me to pick a side." Marcus didn't deny it. You already did the moment you walked out of that bank. That evening, Elena sat across from her mother at the kitchen table, untouched tea growing cold between her hands. You look tired, her mother said gently. I am, Elena replied. Her mother hesitated. Your uncle says Daniel is dangerous. Elena let out a hollow laugh. Dangerous to who? To stability, her mother said carefully. To reputation. Elena looked up sharply. Or to people who've never been told no. Her mother frowned. You shouldn't speak that way. Why? Elena asked, voice rising. Because they're family? Because they have titles and influence? Her mother's lips pressed thin. Because that's the world we live in. Elena shook her head slowly. No, it's the world you taught me to survive in, not the one I want to live in. Silence fell. Her mother sighed. Do you love him? Elena's eyes filled instantly. Yes. Then why aren't you with him? Elena swallowed hard. Because I don't know how to stand beside someone who refuses to bow. Her mother studied her for a long moment. Then you don't love him, she said softly. You love what he provides. The words hit harder than any accusation Victor had made. That night, Daniel walked into a private dining room overlooking the river. No signs, no branding, just quiet power. 5 people sat at the table. Marcus Ellery stood to greet him. Gentlemen, this is Daniel Cross. No one asked where he went to school. No one asked about his background. They asked about numbers, cash flow, risk exposure. Long-term strategy, Daniel answered calmly, precisely. 20 minutes in, one of the men leaned back. Victor Hale thinks you're reckless. Daniel met his gaze. Victor Hale thinks silence equals weakness. A few smiles flickered. Another man spoke. If Hawthorne collapses, there will be fallout. Daniel nodded. I'm not interested in collapse. I'm interested in accountability. Marcus folded his hands. Daniel has something Victor doesn't. Restraint, Daniel said, and credibility, Marcus added. The room fell quiet. Finally, the oldest man at the table spoke. If we support you, this escalates. Daniel didn't flinch. It already has. The man nodded once. Then let's stop pretending. By morning, the tide turned. An internal audit at Hawthorne Financial was announced. Quietly at first, then louder as regulators got involved. Victor Hale was placed on temporary administrative leave pending review. Daniel read the news on his phone while standing in line for coffee. He felt nothing. No triumph. No relief. Just clarity. His phone buzzed again. Elena. He stared at the name for a long moment before answering. Daniel, she said quickly, breathless. They suspended him. My uncle. I know, Daniel replied. They're blaming you. I assumed they would. Her voice cracked. I didn't tell them anything. I swear I believe you, he said. Silence stretched. Do you hate me? She asked quietly. Daniel closed his eyes. No. Then why does this feel like goodbye? She whispered. Because sometimes love isn't enough, he said gently. Not when respect is conditional. She began to cry. I didn't know how to choose, she sobbed. Daniel's voice softened. You did choose, just not me. They hung up without saying goodbye. That afternoon, Daniel stood on the balcony of his office watching the city below. Deals resumed, calls returned, doors reopened. Power shifted quickly when fear changed sides. If you're still listening, if this story resonates with you, this is a good moment to subscribe. Stories like this only work when people stay to the end, and there's more coming. Daniel's phone buzzed with a final message that day. From Marcus. Victor wants to meet. Daniel smiled faintly. The reckoning had arrived. Victor Hale chose the venue himself. A private lounge on the top floor of a members-only club, overlooking the city. Glass walls, soft lighting. The kind of place designed to remind people of their status. The kind of place Victor had always believed belonged to him. Daniel arrived 5 minutes early. Victor arrived 10 minutes late. When he finally stepped inside, the difference was unmistakable. His suit was still expensive, but it no longer fit the moment. The confidence that once carried him seemed brittle now, stretched thin over something raw. Daniel, Victor said, forcing a smile. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Daniel didn't stand. You asked. I listened. Victor sat across from him, placing his phone face down on the table as if to signal sincerity. This situation has spiraled. It spiraled the moment you confused superiority with authority, Daniel replied. Victor's jaw tightened. I'm trying to fix things. For yourself, Daniel said. Victor leaned forward. You've made your point. You humiliated me. You destabilized my position. What more do you want? Daniel met his gaze evenly. Nothing from you. Victor blinked. That's not true. It is, Daniel said calmly. You think this is about punishment. It's not. It's about distance. Victor scoffed weakly. Distance. I don't want your influence, Daniel continued. I don't want your apology. And I don't want you anywhere near my finances, my work, or my personal life. Victor's voice dropped. You can't just erase me. Daniel nodded once. I already did. Silence fell between them, thick and uncomfortable. Victor's composure cracked. Do you know what I lost? Daniel's expression didn't change. Do you know what you tried to take? Victor's lips parted, then closed again. You didn't just insult me, Daniel said. You tried to define my worth in front of people who mattered to my wife. You planted doubt where there shouldn't have been any. Victor swallowed. Elena is sensitive. She feels torn. She was torn long before me, Daniel replied. You just made her choose. Victor exhaled shakily. If I apologize publicly, I don't want it. If I step down quietly, not my concern. Victor slammed his hand lightly against the table. Then what do you want? Daniel finally leaned forward. I want you to understand this. Victor froze. You don't get to decide who belongs, Daniel said, voice low but steady. Not in business, not in families, not anywhere. Victor stared at him, something like fear flickering behind his eyes. The meeting ended without a handshake. Victor left smaller than he arrived. 3 days later, Hawthorne Financial announced Victor Hale's permanent resignation. The press framed it as a personal decision. The industry knew better. Elena read the news alone in her childhood bedroom, phone trembling in her hands. Her mother stood in the doorway, watching her carefully. It's over, Elena whispered. Her mother nodded. For him. Elena looked up. For me, too. She packed that night. Not to go back to Daniel, but to leave the house that had always felt like a performance. She rented a small apartment across town, started taking smaller contracts, clients who didn't care about who her uncle was. For the first time, her life felt quiet. Across the city, Daniel stood in the renovated mixed-use building, sunlight pouring through the tall windows. Workers moved efficiently around him. Progress everywhere he looked. Marcus Ellery joined him near the railing. You handled it cleanly. I didn't handle it, Daniel replied. I stepped away. Marcus smiled. That's handling it. Daniel checked his phone. A message from his lawyer confirmed the divorce was finalized. Clean, quiet, no public spectacle. He felt the loss, but not regret. That evening, Daniel sat alone in his office, city lights glowing beyond the glass. He thought about the man he'd been when he first walked into that bank, about the silence he'd tolerated for the sake of peace. He understood now. Peace that costs dignity isn't peace, it's submission. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Daniel, Elena's voice said softly. I just wanted you to know. I'm learning, slowly, painfully, but honestly. He closed his eyes. I hope you find what you're looking for. I think I already lost it, she replied. Silence. Take care of yourself, Daniel said. You too. The call ended. Months passed. Daniel's portfolio grew. New partnerships formed, built on performance, not pedigree. He funded scholarships for trade programs, invested in apprenticeships, quietly supported people who reminded him of his younger self. No speeches, no announcements, just action. One afternoon, standing on the rooftop of his newest acquisition, Daniel watched the city stretch out before him, imperfect, relentless, full of people trying to prove they belonged. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. He'd learned the lesson the hard way. Your worth isn't granted by institutions, families, or titles. It's earned in the moments you refuse to shrink. And if this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that dignity matters more than approval, then subscribe for more stories like this. And if you've ever had to walk away from people who couldn't respect you, leave a comment. You're not alone. Daniel turned back toward the work waiting for him, because building never stops, and neither does becoming. The city didn't notice when Daniel Cross stopped chasing validation, but it felt the shift anyway. 6 months after Victor Hale's resignation, Hawthorne Financial quietly merged with a larger institution. No headlines, no scandal, just absorption, the kind that erased legacies without ever saying their names out loud. Daniel watched it happen from a distance. He was in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows, reviewing renovation timelines for 3 new properties, when his assistant stepped in. Mr. Cross, she said, careful but excited. The zoning board approved the Rivergate project. Unanimously. Daniel looked up. No delays? She smiled. No delays. He nodded once. Good. Let's move. Momentum had a sound to it now. Calls returned faster than they rang. Meetings ended with handshakes instead of caveats. People didn't ask where he came from anymore. They asked where he was going. Later that afternoon, Marcus Ellery joined him on the balcony overlooking the river. The building below buzzed with controlled chaos, workers, inspectors, movement in every direction. You've changed the temperature in this city, Marcus said. Daniel leaned against the railing. I didn't mean to. Marcus glanced at him. You did something more dangerous than revenge. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Which is, you showed people they weren't untouchable, Marcus replied, without burning everything down. Daniel exhaled slowly. I just stopped accepting disrespect. Marcus smiled faintly. That's usually how it starts. They stood in silence for a moment. You know, Marcus continued, Victor tried to get back into the circuit. Daniel didn't look surprised. How did that go? Poorly, Marcus said. Turns out reputation follows you longer than money. Daniel nodded. That's something he never understood. That evening, Daniel drove through a quieter part of the city, past old storefronts and half-renovated blocks. He pulled over in front of a modest community center. The sign out front read, Skills over status. Enrollment open. Inside, young men and women worked at long tables, learning trades, business fundamentals, finance basics. No lectures about prestige, just practical knowledge. Daniel watched from the doorway for a moment. One of the instructors noticed him. Can I help you? Daniel shook his head. Just checking in. The instructor smiled. They don't know it yet, but you changed a lot of lives. Daniel looked back at the room. They're changing their own. He left quietly. Across town, Elena stood in her small apartment, folding laundry as rain tapped against the windows. Her life was simpler now, smaller, but it was hers. She'd lost clients who valued her last name more than her work, gained others who didn't ask questions she didn't want to answer. Her phone buzzed, a notification, Rivergate District grand opening. She stared at it for a long moment. She didn't go, and for the first time, she didn't regret the choice. That night, Daniel sat alone in his office, reviewing numbers. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer confirming another clean acquisition, then another from Marcus about an international opportunity. He set the phone down. For a moment, he thought about the man he'd been standing in that bank months ago, the way the room had looked at him like he didn't belong. He smiled faintly. Belonging had never been the goal. Freedom was the freedom to walk away, the freedom to choose, the freedom to say no without fear. Daniel shut down his computer and stood, city lights glowing behind him. Tomorrow would bring more deals, more challenges, more decisions. But tonight he allowed himself one quiet truth. He hadn't won because he was richer. He hadn't won because he was smarter. He'd won because he refused to stay, silent when someone tried to make him small. And that lesson, more than money, more than status, was worth everything it had cost him. If you stayed until the end, thank you. Stories like this are about more than wealth. They're about self-respect, boundaries, and the courage to walk away when silence costs too much. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, and share it with someone who needs the reminder. Daniel turned off the lights and walked out into the night, still building, still moving forward, unapologetically.